I'm DaJuan Johnson, and I'm excited to introduce you to my Think Bigger Actor podcast, where I'm going to share with you different kinds of talks and coachings and conversations with actors and industry professionals on thinking bigger. I hope these conversations will help you on your path to success, because I believe success is an inside job that starts with your mindset and the thoughts you hold dominant in your mind. Change your thoughts and you change your world. Your path to thinking bigger begins now. Hey, Tara.
DaJuan.
Hi.
Hi.
I do not think I've seen you since you were a student in my acting class. I want to say that, of course, I've seen you in the internet streets, yes, but I don't think I've seen you like this since acting class when you were a student. Is that about right? Am I misremembering?
No, you're right. I was just thinking about it myself. It was the spring of 2014.
Wow.
Not crazy.
Is that the last time you were in an acting class that you're like, I'm not doing this anymore?
Yes. I was thinking about that too. I was like, this is going to come up. That was like my last acting pursuit.
Yeah.
Like my last serious acting pursuit was being in class with you that spring. Yeah.
Wow. Well, let's jump right into that, because I think that is an amazing question. But well, hold on. You doing okay?
I'm doing okay.
Listen, I don't know if the socials are for real, right? Like you look like you're doing great, but
yes, I'm doing well. Thank you.
Yeah, through the pandemic and all this good stuff.
So far, so good. Yeah.
I know, right?
Yes.
I know. I had COVID for the first time 2 years. In 2 years, I got it in May. So I had been dodging it for such a good long time, and then I finally got it, and I was happy. The internet doesn't know that. I didn't share it. I didn't post my test or anything like that, because I was like, not for shame or anything like that, but also, I gotta be on people's shows.
Yeah, I get it. I miraculously have not gotten it yet, but I wouldn't be sharing either.
Yeah, I'm as far as everybody on the outside knows, DaJuan is healthy and running around great. So, cool. Okay, so I want to hear this. I want to know, spring of 2014. That was mine too, by the way, I think.
Oh, really?
I think so. My boys came. We adopted our boys in April of 2014, I believe, or was it 2013? I'm one of those, and I was just around that time landing that. If I were your teacher, then that means 2014, and I was getting ready to land that plane. You know what I mean? To be completely done and on my own for that. So, first of all, let's just ask the question, the elephant that everybody is listening and wants to know. How was I as a teacher?
Really great, DaJuan.
Yeah.
Really great. Yeah, you really, really were.
So yeah. I didn't break you.
Not you. Things were already in progress. I was already on my way out, I promise.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that.
I don't know if I knew that. You know what I mean? Like I had been in LA since 2010. So it had been, almost 4 years. And by the time I got to your class, I think I was aware that if I was going to be an actor forever, I would have to figure out a different way to do it than the standard pursuit of get an agent, get headshots, get in a class, and hope you get an audition. That did not work for me. I was not happy. I was just not happy at all. The pursuit of that career drove me nuts. And I was like, if I'm going to do this, I have to do it very differently. And so by your class, by spring of 2014, Brandy and I had already made a short film that would be my transition out.
Muted by
Yeah.
that time. Yeah. And it's so funny. She's speaking of Brandy Ford, who really, if you want to talk about an amazing networker or amazing person that asks for what she wants, it's Brandy Ford, who I met, by the way, on Twitter when Twitter first started. And Brandy just reached out to me because we were talking in the world of, the industry. And she asked me to read one of her scripts. She was like, would you read it and give me some notes on it? And I was like, yes, absolutely. And it was the wedding one. I can't remember the wedding one. It was something like a wedding planner or something.
I have a wedding planner.
Oh yeah, there it is. It was like wedding. And I just, we kept going and doing it. And so to hear Muted, that's very interesting to hear that that was your quote unquote swan song for it. But I'm very intrigued by you saying like, I have to do this another way. Like this was not working because of the daily grind of, I guess, auditioning or waiting for someone to tell you when to act was not working for you. Is that about right?
That is exactly right. I think I figured that out very, very quickly. Like I was like a preteen actor, like in Northern California. And then I started doing commercials as a teen. And then I went to Berkeley. So there was a ton of Bay Area theater, like awesome equity theater. And so like half my college experience was doing shows.
Mm-hmm.
And I just could not wait to move to LA. Like I was the college kid who was like in message boards, like trying to talk to working actors while I was still in college to like figure out what headshot photographer I should hit up when I get to LA. Like I was obsessive even then. And then I was
more focused.
or that. And when I moved here, I very quickly realized, oh man, I'm a very, 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 very small fish in a really big pond. And in the Bay Area, I did one equity show and I was like getting offers. So I got there and I was like, oh, this is going to work very differently. And I very quickly realized that I don't like how it works. No. The waiting around, like I just felt like I was waiting for permission every day of my life. And I couldn't handle it. I was like, I'm just not built for this. Like I would wake up every day and be like, what can I do today? Oh, wait, I think I've already done everything I can do today. I had great agents. I had great headshots. I was in classes. I was doing all the workshops. I was working on the craft and the business and doing everything that I could think to do. And still like months and months and months would go by without getting an audition. And I was like, I can't, my contentment cannot depend on whether I get an email from my agent that day telling me I have an audition. And I got to that point and I stayed in that for a couple years. And then I was like, I'm not going to last. Like I remember thinking, I was like 21 when I moved here. I remember thinking, if someone would guarantee me that at 30, I would be a series regular, I'm not going to last. Like I still would not last 9 years.
Yeah.
If somebody could guarantee me that like this kind of pie in the sky goal that we all moved here for would happen, I still could not live this life for 9 years. And that's kind of how I knew.
I want to dig a little deeper because, that's what I do. But you said I got to that point. What did that point feel like? And DaJuan, why are you like harping on this? Because I think a lot of actors are at that point before they know it, but they're like, I'm just gonna, go back in because I'm trying to possibly please someone at home or prove to that person who was my 5th grade teacher that said I can't do it. And I just want to like hear your experience of what that point was in pursuit of making it clear for maybe some other people, or it might open up something. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't like my day. I think it's like the most simple foundational way to put it. Like I woke up and I was like, what now? I'm just waiting for something to come to me that I can't really control. Like it's just so diametrically like opposite who I am that I was like, but what else can I be doing? Like, there's got to be something else that I can be doing. And man, I was interning at casting off. Like I lost my mind being like, there's got to be something else. There's got to be. So like, I was interning at like 3 different casting offices. I was at the Actors Network when that was still a thing. I mean, I was trying all of the angles and it still felt like it's going to happen or it's not going to happen.
Not moving. It's not like you had no... you have no control over that.
I was just unhappy.
Yeah.
I was like, nothing is really worth this, right? Because I had friends who, had those resumes that I aspired to. Where I moved here and I have a very close friend, one of my best friends today, who had, like 4 recurrings on her resume. And I remember moving here and being like, oh my God, like that's what I want. That sounds awesome. And then we'd have lunch and we were having the exact same problems. At a different level, very different level, but we were having the same problems of, I'm not getting that audition. My friend's getting in on that. What can I do to get in front of this casting director? I keep testing for things I'm not booking. And I was like, oh no, so this is it. This is the life. And
this is the life
forever. So either I'm okay with that and the rewards make all this worth it, or I'm not. And I was not.
Mm, and that's one of the things you I'm having so many feels right now from this, well, because it's very true what you said. This is the life. And, I've come every time I've gotten to a new quote unquote level, bunny ears level, I've realized, oh, we're still doing the same thing, just with a smaller pool. Right. It's like it gets to that level. Like, I've expressed this on my podcast before, but I'm talking about I came off a show from 7 years. I expected people to be lined up with like, sign here. What's your next show? Can I go to that recurring? Can I go to here? And, and it has not been that way. And so what I think it does, if you have not done the work, it starts to play on your psyche. Like in a major way, right? You're like, wasn't I just doing this a decade ago? Like, shouldn't this be, and it is a lot easier, by the way. It is, there's points of it that are easier, but this is the life. And if I think actors, and I've tried to be this way with my podcast and on the road to success, we have to talk about it. So everybody who stays in it understands it. And they're not like, I thought it was supposed to get easier.
Yeah.
That was a guttural like sound that just came.
I'm feeling it. Yeah. It was such a disillusionment in like every way, moving here and thinking that is all I would ever want. And that was going to be me forever. And then realizing that I like the results, but I hate the process. Yeah. And it was mostly process. And I can't do it.
Well, that's good. Like I said, I don't want to take you back too far there, because if I have many people I've worked with, clients or friends that have left the industry, whether they're doing real estate, whether they're doing, just other stuff. I've often just been like, what was that moment for you? Right. And, one of my friends was just like, I like to eat, right. It's like, I like to eat at nice restaurants. And that wasn't, and I was like, right on. And, and this person sells like, great stuff now, so I totally understand that. And I also think that with this information, we get to decide if this is what we want, because we can sign up for it now. Now I feel like my eyes are open. There isn't any disillusionment. It's like, great, this is what's up. Well, how do we get into from, again, in our classroom on Hollywood Boulevard, I think that's Sunset Boulevard, from there to producing and writing?
Brandy and I were miserable.
I promise you all, this podcast is going to take a turn.
We were miserable and hating waiting for permission. And Brandy had already made something. She already made her web series, Diary of a Wedding Planner. And I had made like a tiny little 3-episode like web sketch thing with some friends. And I just remember feeling like, okay, I'm making something. I am engaged. I am productive. I am proactive. I like working with people. I like not waiting for things. And it just seemed like, okay, like, let's do something together. Mm-hmm. And Brandy had an idea that we didn't think had been really tackled in narrative form. And we were like, okay, I like this. And I think she had like a 40-page script. And we were like, ooh, I think all the film festival short films are like 12. We need to like really compress. And so like we cut this thing down to 12, 13 pages. And then of course we got ambitious and we were like, well, we've been interning at casting offices. Maybe one of those like associates, we can like throw them whatever, $500, and they'll like try to cast this for us. Cause there was a really awesome lead for a Black woman in her 40s or 50s. And so we were like, let's try it the real way. And so we hired a casting director. We hired Robin Lippin, and who like I had interned for at some point. And she made a few phone calls and she got Chandra Wilson to want to be the lead of our short. And we were like, huh, really? Okay. So if we write something, Brandy wrote it, if we produce something and we get it to a point where people like it, we can get Chandra Wilson to be in our project. This is wild. And
this story gets wilder because I know other pieces of it that I'm going to share too.
It was such a testament to, I want to make things happen. I don't want to wait for them to happen. And that's when we learned we had to be on another side of it. We just did. And Chandra came on board. And then because we had her, we got an incoming call from Malcolm Jamal Warner's agent, which was nuts, who was like, yeah, we saw you guys put out this breakdown on Actors Access. Because of course, what else would we put it? Yeah, we saw you guys put this up and Malcolm would love to be opposite Chandra. Like, what do you think of him? We were like, Yes. Yeah. Duh. I think he had like a scene and we were like, we'll give him 4 more. We'll just take out our own scenes. It's all good. And then of course, once we had them, then we just, cast the rest, and we spent like an entire month of June just kickstarting and trying to raise funds. And I think we raised like 15 grand or something. And we made a short film over 3.5 days. We got to this little set, which was like a friend of a friend's of a friend's house in Atwater Village. And we got to that set and I looked around and I remember thinking, this is really cool. Like, look at all these people that are here, this like amazing equipment that is here. Why is a TV star here? Like, this is crazy. Like, this is so much more exciting than acting ever was. And it was just so much more fulfilling. And of course, we each had like a couple scenes with Chandra, and that was like the entire impetus years ago. And then I got to that set and I love acting. I'm always going to love acting. And I loved being opposite her and Malcolm. And like that story was so important to be told at that time. And unfortunately still today, but it was everything else that I really found really fulfilling. And the acting kind of became the secondary role that we were playing on this set. And that's kind of just how I knew, like, this is more me. It's using both sides of my brain in a way that at least I couldn't figure out how to make acting use. And it was just more, I think fulfilling is just the best answer for it.
It's so good. That's so good. And I think I just want to break something down that you said. You broke it down. You're like, so wait a minute. If I could write a piece, 12 to 14 pages, and I could get it to be really good, you mean I could get some A-list talent that wants to be in it? And if A-list talent wants to be in it, then other A-list talent wants to be in it too. And we just have to do it. That is a beautiful, inspirational formula right there.
Yeah.
And one of the pieces that you did not tell that I hope I can tell, because I know I've been on the other side of this a lot, is when those people came on board, you had amazing directors lined up. And everybody listening, can I say the first director? Is it okay? I mean, they didn't do it. I don't. We'll edit it out if it isn't. But I want to say, I know you guys had, who was looking at it, who was thinking about it, was Regina King.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, I remember talking to Brandy, and I was like, she was like, do we just send it to her reps? And I was like, you just send it to her reps? Like, yeah, we just had a thing. We just send it to her reps. And I was like, wow. And, for a bit there, it looked like she might do it. Is that correct? Am I misremembering that?
Oh, no, you're right. It was like almost a year of us waiting for her to be able to fit it into her schedule. And it was, I remember exactly where I was when we got the call that it just wasn't going to work out. And I think she like booked her first feature to direct. And let me say that the timing was also incredibly auspicious, which is that she was looking to start directing. Mm-hmm. This would not happen today. She was looking to try something different. And I think as we were waiting for her, I think she was recording Boondocks, and she might have still been on Southland, maybe.
I think she was on Southland, and I think she was getting ready to do an episode of that, episode directing of that. I think it was like something in that world that was happening. But I think the real point of that for me is like, you all, I remember, like, I don't want to say you're nobodies because you are somebody, but we're like nobody that the industry really knew, and came up out of this, and we're like, we're going to do this, and here's what we did. And it was just like, it was magical. And I still tell that story. It was really magical to just be like, cool, who can we get for this? So much so, by the way, when I wrote my short and I started putting the pitch deck together, I was like, oh, I want that person. I want Jennifer Lewis for my mom. And it didn't feel far-fetched because I remember that story. So
amazing. That's amazing. All of it felt far-fetched to us the entire way through. You know what I mean? Like, even not telling the story, I'm like, oh yeah, that did happen. That was weird. Like, it just still feels far-fetched, but you kind of just have to try it because you never know.
Yeah. And I also just love the way you said that, like, it was how you knew you loved producing, because it was fulfilling and there was no more waiting for permission. It was like, it sounded like the way you told that story, writer, that it was like energy. I could see the house. I could see this, like, oh, wow, this is really kind of cool. What are you doing here?
Yeah, you're right. I think energy is such a great element of it. I felt better.
Yeah. And you didn't feel that way in acting?
I felt that way in acting when I got to act.
Oh, yeah.
But the vast majority of it is not that. And I did not feel that way otherwise.
Yeah. Great. And just so we know, not that you have to create stuff just so it gets somewhere, but Muted went on to be on HBO, if I remember correctly, in Cinemax, and it went to win a couple festivals or work or be in a couple festivals and stuff. And so it was this little engine that could almost, right? That just picked up steam.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was truly like, I remember thinking, this is by far the most fulfilling thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
And we didn't wait around for it. We just did it. I think we should keep going down this path. Why would I ever go back to the other one where not only was I not happy, but I also wasn't getting any results. So I was like, there was really no reason to go back and keep trying it the way that we had been trying it. I was like, this has worked out. Let's try it this way from now on.
What do you think right now? I mean, just like your opinion, like a lot of people, like actors don't really want to do that route still. Like it's still resistance to this route. And I wonder, what do you think about that? Is it just because it's not fruitful anymore? Or is it just you don't want to put that much energy into it? What do you feel like? Because I still have people who see Issa Rae or see Quinta, who's created this, Abbott Kinney, Abbott Elementary. Abbott Kinney is a place, a street out here in Santa Monica, but they still don't want to do it. And I just wonder, why is that? Do you think?
I don't think it's for everyone. I think that it worked out for us on, that project and a couple others after, because we really did have producer brains. We really were that personality and that temperament. Both of us were. We were just in a career that did not really allow for that to be an asset in the same way that I think writing and producing do. But I think that's why we found each other and why our partnership works so well, because we both kind of felt stuck in something because who we were was actually on this other side. So I think someone who's an actor it's not necessarily their path. I don't think it's for everyone. I think we did not act for a year and a half. We stopped pursuing the whole other path because it took that long to find a director, to raise the money, to find the locations, to figure out how the hell to produce a film. I mean, we switched tracks. So I think if either of us were truly, truly only actors at heart, that wouldn't really make sense. Work. You know?
Mm-hmm. I hated producing.
I
could probably be a grip and do hard, because I think what they do is so intense. I could never, producing for me was just not the part of the brain that I want to work in, because it fostered too much anxiety for me. It taps into too much of my, traumatic anxiety. And I'm just like, I can't be this person for you. And I just you can be good at it. I'm good at it, but it just is not something that I love doing at all. So anybody out there, you definitely don't want to do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. How did you and Brandy meet, by the way?
How did Brandy and I meet? Well, this is maybe, emblematic. We met in a business for actors class. So not an acting class. There was no acting happening here. It was like a figure out the business, figure out your type, those things, 6 months after I moved to LA.
Oh, cool. So you guys have been friends for a long bit of time, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then, all right. So I got it. So we're out here. We're actor. We're out here. We transition. It's not working the way you thought it would be. And you get into producing, and then you do some Muted. But then how did we get into, because this is interesting, to writing?
Well,
I mean, did I skip a step? Because I know there's a showrunner's assistant in there. Okay, cool.
We had this super successful short film, Muted.
Mm-hmm.
We had the two stars who very much wanted to make the feature.
Mm-hmm.
Brandy wrote the feature script. And then we were like, now what? We need $1 million to make this.
Yeah.
And we tried a few production companies. We tried those avenues. We partially didn't really have the knowledge or experience of how to really go about that on our own at the time. And it was also just really hard. It was just really fucking hard to get anybody to be like, successful short film, here's a script. Neither of us has any credits otherwise. Want to give us $1 million? I mean, it just felt like, again, we were waiting for something. Mm-hmm. And so we both just started writing. We started writing short films and then features and then pilots to not have to wait for something. It was like, okay, what else can we do to keep being proactive and productive and actually working on something every day rather than hoping somebody will call you back?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So we both started writing. We both were like, well, TV seems like the most stable of the animals. It seems like there's a bit of a hierarchy, and that to some degree, it will be you go to one level, you go to another level, you go to another level, like all our friends who are doctors or lawyers get to do. This seems like the closest thing that we maybe get to do. And so we both started just writing pilots and trying to get better at that. We like had a writers group for years. And then we were like, well, let's try to get on a TV show. Let's try to like be an assistant on one or try to get staffed on one. Like, let's kind of try that path. And then this is such an LA random story, through a Facebook group, through like an LA TV writers Facebook group, I log in one day and there's a post by this guy who's saying that he wants to replace himself as the showrunner's assistant on Scandal. And as you can imagine, like he posted like 35 minutes before I saw it. And there was like 185 comments, like sent. Should it be in your email? Like, do you need my resume? Like, how do I get this to you kind of thing? And I was like, well, I'm obviously late, but who knows? So I sent him a little intro message. I sent him 2 pilots and my resume, and he somehow got back to me for some reason. And we chatted and I got an interview with his boss and I got the job.
Yeah. So wait, so for people that don't know, can you explain what is a showrunner's assistant? And who was the showrunner then at that time? Was that Kristen? It was
Mark Fish.
Mark Fish. Okay, cool.
Showrunner's assistant. So a showrunner is the CEO of a TV show. They are the creative lead and the producing lead. They have an assistant because it's really a 3-person job. And there really should be 3 people trying to run a show, but there's often 1 or 2. And so I was not at the very, very bottom of the totem pole, but like pretty close. I was just his assistant. So I kind of got to see him run the writer's room, got to see him dealing with Shondaland as a company. And I got to be around 12 writers all day, every day for 2 years. I was there for 2 seasons. And kind of assist him on whatever, being liaison between departments, printing things and all the assistive scheduling that you can imagine. I did that for a couple of years.
Yeah. Great. Okay. I didn't know myself. I was like, I know what a showrunner does. We obviously have one, or we usually have co-showrunners on the show or something like that too, that do that. But I want to make sure I didn't think, showrunner's assistant wasn't somebody that was like already writing or staff.
Nope. It's one of the like 4 or 5 assistant positions before you get to writer.
Okay. Great. So you got the showrunner position by LA Magic. As you call it.
That's right.
And then, so you did that for 2 years. And okay, then what happened? Because I feel like there has to be some time in there because you did that for a while. And then all of a sudden I was like, Promised Land. You know what I mean? Like the way it looked like from the outside, we're like, maybe
it was like there was a lifetime in between there. I'm glad they didn't look that way, but trust me.
I know. My God. We're not on that side, right?
There was 3 years in between that. And I was lucky in that those 3 years I was employed because I followed my boss. So Scandal ended. And then Shonda went to Netflix famously, and my boss followed her to Netflix. And so he had an overall deal, which is a salaried 1 to 2 to 3 year deal under which he developed shows for Shondaland and for Netflix. And so he just brought me with him because under an overall deal, a showrunner will get an assistant paid for. Okay. So I essentially stayed his assistant for 5 years total, except that those 3 years were very different because we were not on a show. He was just developing, which is can be a very solitary, independent pursuit. And so I had a lot of free time. So it was great. I was getting my bills paid barely, but they were getting paid, and kind of getting to see the development process from afar, getting to kind of hear from him how it was going, but mostly just having a lot of free time. And I just kept writing. And I don't know how many pieces of material I wrote in those 3 years, but 5, 6, a lot. And just try to get a lot better at what I was trying to do. And I think I was in a writer's group at the same time. And that's when Promised Land happened. So it was really 5 years from when I became an assistant in television.
Yeah. I want to just pause for a second, and just like free time kills creatives, right? It kills them because they don't know what to do in that free time. So you either get lost in thought and you crash and burn, or, you work or whatever it does. Like, how did you focus in that free time? Because it sounds like if they're in a development deal, like, what are we talking? Like weeks here, months here? Like, it sounds like a lot of time to yourself.
Oh my gosh. I mean, mostly just time to myself for 3 years.
Wow.
Okay. One thing that really helped is that by this point I had a manager. I had a literary manager that I got my second year on Scandal. So it was helpful because my particular company, which is Lit Entertainment, which used to be Madhouse, and my manager's name is Kendrick Tan. By the time that I got to this deal, I'd already been with him for a year. And at this particular company, they are very much, you need to be generating material at all times. And if you're not doing that, this is not a good fit for you. So basically they have all these like worker bees who are trying to be creators and who can't sit still. Is basically it's kind of the breed of writers that they rep. And, that's me. Can't sit still. So I think I was already in practice through the last year of Scandal that I always had to be writing the next piece because, as my manager puts it, every time you put out a piece of material, you get a chance at bat. And that is, I think, what I was missing as an actor was that I did not know how to increase my chances at bat. I did not know, and maybe I never figured it out. And there's an answer out there that I don't know. But I never figured out how to increase those chances more than what I was already doing. But as a writer, if I want to wake up at 6 and I want to write for 12 hours and I want to crank out a script in a month and have my manager sign off on it and send it out, I'm creating an opportunity that month.
Yeah.
And I think that is the only thing that has kept me sane as a writer, because to be completely frank, there are elements of waiting and of things are not in your control as a writer either. It's like, I think you may have to run a studio to have full control over anything in this business. Like there are still those elements that drive me nuts, but kind of the saving grace is that if I want to work my ass off today and create an opportunity, I can do that. And so I was already in that practice by the time I got the Netflix deal. So it was just 3 years of me being like, how many opportunities can I create right now?
Yeah. So your free time turned into a little bit more fulfilling, it sounds like. And again, when we had free time as an actor, it was not fulfilling because it was literally like nothing else I could do but stew into my own emotions and feelings. And like, this isn't happening for me. So I'm just drawing the parallel there, it sounds like,
yes,
for the free time. As an actor, I think you have to or get to embrace the downtime, right? Like embrace it, and you have to fall in love with it just as much as the peaks, because if not, the valleys will take you out. They will absolutely take you out. And so it's wonderful to hear. So Promised Land came about. Was that a deal under your guy that you transferred over to Netflix with? Or okay, cool. Okay, back up. I'm getting the head shake.
There we go. It was one of those, you plant the seed and then it comes to fruition years later. It was one of those. So when I got my manager, I wrote a feature that was a little bit of a female modern click or bedtime stories, or those like magical realism comedies. And as I was finishing that script, my manager's boss signed a writer named Matt Lopez, who wrote bedtime stories, the Adam Sandler, reads bedtime stories, they come true movie. And so my manager had the idea of, hey, when we're done with the script, let's see if Matt wants to be attached to it as a producer to, help elevate and legitimize me, still a very new writer, and just get his thoughts, his notes, and he'll be part of the process. And so that is how I met Matt Lopez, who 3 years later created Promised Land. He was attached to my feature in 2018, I want to say. We stayed in touch. We had a great kind of creative process together. We're both like type A, busy bees who can't sit still. And we just kind of stayed in touch. And then 2.5, 3 years later, he sold a show about immigrants. And I remember telling my manager, like, we need to keep our eye on this one, please. If this, the chances of any show that sells going is like 10%. But in the miracle that this show goes, I really want us to stay on top of it. And miracle happened. The show went. And I reached out to Matt and I was like, hey, I know you're hiring writers soon.
Put me in the game, coach.
Help me out here, sir. I promise I can do it. And that is how Promised Land happened.
Yeah. That's a hard one. That's a hard one sometimes, or a challenging one, I think, sometimes for actors to really trust that the seeds that they're planting will come to fruition at some point. Or, trust that, when you go into a room 10 years later, that person's going to remember you, or somebody's going to jog their memory. And I think that it's challenging. I've been there, you know, where I've been studio and network's choice. No, I've been studio's choice, and everybody else's choice, but not the network's choice. And I'm like, well, that casting director will remember me, right? And I'm like, I don't know, right? You don't know. And so, but we have to trust that 3 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later, that it will come down the pike for us. So
Yeah. Oof. I mean, honestly, like, the biggest thing that's happened in my career was a literal result of, the thing that happened years later. But I still don't trust that. I'm still like, I mean, I guess maybe I just spent a month working on this pitch and like I didn't get it. And maybe I just wasted a month. I still have very like extremely results oriented thoughts.
Yeah.
And I have to like get out of my own way sometimes and just like do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And be okay with that being what I can do and not be attached to the outcome that I want. And that is just like the curse. That is the curse. I think it's just a double-edged sword of ambition, I guess, where it's like it's great because you have 3 years and you're going to write a shit ton and you will not waste a minute of those 3 years. But then when you've been doing it for a long enough time and the results that you wanted have not come down the pipeline, it is maddening. So it's the double-edged sword.
Well, I also hear it's a lot about networking too, networking or relationships, if we don't want to call it networking, but it's about really, you could have lost touch with him in 3 years. You could have not kept that relationship warm. You know what I mean? So you're randomly calling out of the blue 17 years later or something. You're like, hi.
Remember me?
Remember me?
You're totally right. I think relationships are every side of the business there. It's a relationship-based business for sure.
It is a relationships, I I remember I came out of.
I'm sorry for this one. What is this going to be?
It's just a laugh because I came out of, I went to undergrad. I was a theater, major. And I remember I did Hamlet. And I remember coming out here, and the joke I always say about it is when I got out here, everybody did Hamlet too. It's like a sea of Hamlets, that are out here now. But I was very like, I'm going to make it on my craft only. I don't need, these relationships or networking. And, here we are cut to, 20 plus years later. And I'm like, this is a business based off relationships and referrals. It literally is a business based on relationships and referrals, and not like in the gross way. It just is a way that like, if you're sitting at a dinner table, I've seen it happen, and people are like, I think I have something for you. Like, do you know what I mean? Not expecting it, but like you're just in this environment, and it's like, oh, cool, that's how that happened.
Isn't that what reps are?
Yeah.
Right? It's someone that has a relationship that you don't have, and someone else is trusting their stamp of insurance on you. I mean, that's what it all, I think, runs on.
Yeah, my friend booked this major network show. I won't, go into that, but because him and the producer, writer, their kids go to the same preschool. And he was like, I just think you might be really good for this. I've never seen you act or anything, but your look. And I was like, booked it, and major network. And I was like, oh, so the moral here is relationships and have more kids. Like
more kids,
right? I gotta keep one in preschool. But no, this is great. So TV writer on Promised Land, which was, really great. Anything that has to do with a vineyard, like
gorgeous. It was really beautiful show to look at for sure.
Yeah, it's good. And I was sorry to hear it got canceled. It's like, come on, people, come on. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want some BIPOC shows, and we got to watch them, right? You got to watch them, got to get the ratings up and stuff. And so I got a question for you. I was just thinking about when you were talking, when we used to go into the rooms, and this is a podcast about actors, but when we used to go into the rooms back in the before times, the writer was a producer, and sometimes they were in the rooms while we were auditioning as well. I don't know if that is still happening, like in the world of self tapes or things. Are you seeing self tapes now, or head shaking? Tell me what's going on.
Yes, it has been such a fun part of it to be on the other side of it now. Yes, so when
she didn't light up when she was talking about acting, you all, but now she's like, oh.
You're seeing it, DaJuan. You're seeing it.
I'm seeing it. Go ahead.
I was very lucky. Our showrunner, Matt Lopez, who is an absolute gem, allowed everyone to produce their own episode, including the lowly staff writer. It was 5 upper levels and me in this room. So I was not sure if I was going to get to produce my own episode, but bless his heart, he is the best. So I got to produce my own episode. And of course, part of that is casting. And so, thick of COVID, there were no in-person auditions or in-person anything really. Our writer's room was over Zoom. Everything was over Zoom. So the way that we're now seeing it is we are literally just seeing the self-tapes that are being filtered through casting. Casting is sending us 6 to 8 choices per role. And in my particular episode, I was creating 2 recurring characters that stay with us for the rest of the season. So we had at least 2 like pretty big pieces of casting to take care of. And then I want to say we had several co-stars. I mean, we had 5, 6 co-stars and then 2 major recurrings that may have made it to the next season if we would have gotten one. So yeah, we're just getting self-tapes, and it's the writer, the director of the episode, and our showrunner that are all receiving the self-tapes together. And then we are each giving our choices for every part.
Yeah. Okay. So all right. We're going to go into this because this is very interesting for, I think, everyone. So when you see the self-tapes, I got so many questions. So calm down, DaJuan.
We got time.
Right. It's a come down to one. This is exciting. So when you see the self-tapes that come in there, is there anything that stands out to you? I mean, you're seeing 6 to 8 of the best, but like what makes that 1 or 2? Because sometimes it comes down to like, these 2 are just really great, right? Like what makes that 1 or 2 really pop for you in that room?
Okay, I'm going to say one thing that I don't think I've heard writers say before that I wish I kind of knew as an actor, which is that as an actor, if you can figure out, and I know that you often do not get the full script, so it makes this very challenging, but if you can figure out from your sides your character's function in the story, I promise it will be just a game changer. For example, and I think this is the version that you do hear in acting classes because I heard it for years, is like, you're a co-star. You are saying, thank you very much, right this way. It should sound like that. It should be completely thrown away. And even in those 6 to 8 that we're getting, we have at least a couple that are like making an entire meal of it.
Mm-hmm.
That it's just never going to work because you're standing opposite the lead of the show that is getting paid a lot of money to be the lead of the show. You know what I mean? So like understanding your character's function in this. And then the other scenario for my episode was both major recurrings were going to be love interests for 2 of our series regulars.
Yeah.
You got to come off like you have chemistry with your reader, like to some degree. And I know that this is your reader and it could be your mom or your brother or your cousins, whatever. Like, I get it. You're sitting in your living room. Your lighting's not great. Like, who cares? But if I can't see that you have some sort of like flirtatious nature, ability, if you're not charismatic, if I'm not like, yes, that's the guy I want to see opposite our lead, you're not fulfilling the function of your character. Again, it's still about the series regular. Unfortunately, that is just the truth.
Mm-hmm.
But your function is to be a romantic interest for them. So we have to be able to understand why our lead feels that way about you. Mm-hmm. So if you're not exuding those qualities, you could be the most believable, wonderful actor ever, but you're not fulfilling what you need to fulfill. And we had an example like that of one of the romantic interests. He was so good. He was so good, but he was playing a different character. Like you did not feel like a romantic interest for this particular series regular. And like, that can mean a million different things also, which is what makes it really complicated. But I really think like understanding your function, the role of your role in that
device. I call it like, what's your device? Inside my program, I do self-tapes at book. I say, this is going to be hard because you're not a producer or writer, but we have to give our best guesstimate on why are you here at this point in this script when they're literally chopping everything they can to keep it, like if they can keep it under time or whatever. Why did your character stay? What's your device here? And you're saying, if you're a love interest, then we need to beef that up a little bit. If you're supposed to be the foil, I'm using very basic, the foil of this or the villain or whatever, like we need to see something in that world. Is that about right what you're saying?
Yes. And I want to emphasize that because the full reality is that there's a million factors that are not in your control. Mm-hmm. We all know this. We could sit here and talk about, you don't look like this person, you're too short. I mean, one of our female serious regulars was like 5'10". So unfortunately, we were looking at men that were 5'11" and above. I mean, we just were.
Yep.
And I hate that. I think it's ridiculous. Why can't a man be shorter? Like, what the fuck? I don't know. But that's what it was. That was, I don't know whose request that was. It doesn't matter. But like, that's what we were looking for. So if you were not 5'11", it doesn't matter. Like, there's so many things that are out of your control, but we know that and we can put that aside. What we can control is, what are you doing for the story? Because as a writer, I want to make sure my entire episode feels like it's supposed to feel. The entire story needs to work. And if you are telling a different story than I am, this is not going to work.
If you are telling a different story than I am, this is not going to work. So the acting you're seeing, though, is, it seems like it's, at least out of those 6 and 8 are on par. They're great. Nothing.
Yeah, they're awesome. They're awesome.
Nothing stands out to you that like, hey, I love what you said already, by the way, this is gold. But I'm just wondering if any other things that stand out. Like, I want to make sure I say this to actors, as in like, connection we talked about, you said, or anything else that stands out, because actors want to hear this.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the basics was like, try to have the best lighting you can. You have to be in focus. We have to, don't give us a full body and stay at full body. I mean, the technical things, I think, matter to a degree. Mm-hmm. To a degree. Don't create obstacles that don't need to be there, right? Like, I didn't care, but somebody will. Mm-hmm. Like, just make that look right, so that we're focused on you and what you're doing and not everything else.
Character versus memorization?
You should be memorized, in my opinion.
Did you hear that? Say it one more time, just because I laughed over it.
In my opinion, you should be memorized, because you're competing with people that are, and I don't know how you give all of you, when even if you're an incredible cold reader and you're looking down and coming up and looking down and coming up, you're still doing this, and that's not what you'll be doing on screen.
Yeah.
I think it rattles your connection, which, as you said, I think is probably the most important thing. So I would memorize.
Yeah, it's another thing I like to say, again, coming from experience, being on a set for 7 years, it's just my opinion. But when I'm talking about producers and writers and they're seeing self-tapes, what I understood and what they see from sets is they're not used to seeing people like read lines off a page. They're used to seeing it on that screen, connection, building the world and all that stuff. So let's give them what they're used to, instead of, I have to look down and get these lines and think it's okay because somebody told me not to learn my lines until I get in front of the tape. I'm like, that's not what we're doing on this show. My showrunner, my guy, he actually said, I heard there's people out there telling people not to learn their lines. He's like, please tell them in your coaching business to learn their lines, because if they say by accident or not that there's a gray car and we have a black car, it's so important for our story when we're putting stuff together in Bosch. And so I'm always like, just memorize your, don't believe what these people are telling you. I'm telling you, know your lines.
I think you're completely right. And probably in a way that I hadn't even realized till we just having this conversation, I was probably more forgiving of those things, because I understand what the process is. And I understand that even if you're not memorized, like you will be. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But if someone has not been an actor, then I think they will probably feel even more strongly about it.
Yeah. They're not watching it like that. All right. I love this. I love this about self-tapes, and they've become the lay of the lane. And I honestly, I just don't think they're going to go anywhere. You know what I mean? I think we might be at a space where maybe the tests go back into the rooms. But, I had a friend who is the Doogie Howser, Hawaii, who just booked a series regular all off tape. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it just went to studio, went to network. It just, you know what I mean? And they're like, great. And I was like, series regular off a tape? They're like, yeah, well, we don't have to get all those people back into a room during the pandemic. It's like, and why do we need to do it if you're going to do the same thing on tape?
That is fascinating. My only thought about that is like chemistry between people. Mm. Are you taking a bigger risk? Probably. Or I'm not sure. That's the only thing. But otherwise, yeah, I think it totally works. But I do wonder when the chemistry really matters, how you can evaluate that without getting two people in the same room.
Yeah. We'll see about that. So, okay, we're moving a little bit off of self tapes with a little bit of time we have. I wanted to say that so you're on set with the series regulars. Let's move to on set because, you're on there and I've seen your little chair and your little.
Gotta post that photo. Come on.
You do. And listen, I love it, by the way. I do. I'm into it. So we're on set. And one of the things I started to ask myself around season 2 or season 3 of Bosch is like, what if you want to be a series regular, DaJuan, what are the series regulars doing, that you may or may not be doing? And so I guess I want to ask that question because I just sat back. And if you get to be on a set, don't just be there just for you, be there for all the learning stuff that you want to make available to you. So I just started looking at what they were doing so that I can step into the bigger role. And, that came. But what in your mind would you say that maybe some newer, greener actors aren't doing that you see the series regulars on these shows knocking it out of the park?
That's a very good question. I honestly don't know that we had a lot of greener actors on this particular show. We had a lot of veterans. We had a couple people that were first-time series regulars, but had been working for a long time in theater and smaller TV roles. I think what the series regulars are doing is they're doing their job and going home. Like they're doing what they need to do, and they're doing it in as few takes as possible and not wasting everybody's time and being easy to be around. And that's all they're doing.
I was just talking about this. We have to stop before we get to this part. We have to stop being so addicted to notes and being addicted to feedback, right? It's like, and it starts with right now. It's like, how did I do? Know you did a great job. Understand that you are one cog in this wheel, and they're going to let you know if you did not do great because they're making $1 million, multi-million-dollar production. And it's like, as soon as, I would see when on Bosch that as soon as they said cut, the newer actors would be like,
yeah, I get that. I get that, especially if it's like your first time on a big set. Like, oh my gosh, who wouldn't want feedback? Who wouldn't want at least validation of some sort? I mean, dear God, we're human. I totally get that. But at least if we're talking co-stars or guest stars, the ones that I remember are the ones that if there were some times where they literally did their one line once.
Yeah.
And they were out. They were on set for 1 hour. I remember her though. She did her job and
that's it.
She did it. And then there were times when the co-star had to do it 12 times because lighting and camera and series regulars and lunch and whatever. And like, if you still just did your job 12 times, then you were great to be with around set. Great.
Yeah.
You mentioned it's simpler than I think we make it out to be sometimes.
It's a lot simpler. It's a lot simpler than that. I think the challenging part, I'm trying not to use the word hardest, but the most challenging part is booking the role because auditioning for something is totally different than when we get on set. It's totally different. And it's like this whole thing, and people who have worked before, you're a smart actor. So we know what to do when we're on set, but that is not what we need to be doing to book this role. We have to create this entire character, here and let them see this 3-dimensional person. Like we do that on set, but we have to really do it differently for the audition. So you mentioned first time series regulars. And I was just wondering, so anybody's out there, trying to get their first time series regulars, was there any behind the scenes conversations that's like, we're going to give these people a chance because they're just amazing, or we're not going to give them a chance because they're first time series regulars, because this is the business side of things that I don't think we get to hear.
I wish I knew any of that. I do not, because writers come on after the pilot.
Okay.
Unless you're the creator. So Matt Lopez would be your guy for those questions. It would not be me. What I do know is that our show had 2 timelines. And so there was some kind of matching that had to occur. And I think that created some opportunities for people that maybe, credits wise would not necessarily have been considered because you had to match John Ortiz or you had to match Cecilia Suarez. Like you had to kind of look like them in a way 30 years prior. So it kind of like give people opportunities, which is awesome.
Awesome. So as you look back on your life, the last 10 years, right? I mean, what was that? We said 2014. So it's 8 years ago, when we were together. When you look back on it, just taking a step as you look backwards and look forwards, how do you feel?
I feel like I've been doing this my entire life in a way. I'm like, man, has it only been 12 years? Yeah, I guess. Feels like it's just been forever and I wouldn't have it any other way. I like feeling like I've really been working at something for a very, very long time. And it's been kind of a part of me for a very long time, and it always will be. There's something comforting about that.
Mm, I love that. I was just going to ask, like, what would you say to any actors out there who are thinking about transitioning and stuff? But it sounds like you're saying just you wouldn't have it any other way. The journey, is that about right? Or
Yeah, I mean, I would say try it out.
Mhm.
If writing is interesting, do it while you're acting. If producing is interesting, do it while you're acting. Try it out, because we could have tried to make Muted and hated the process, and maybe we'd still be actors, you know.
Yeah.
But there's so many opportunities these days. People are making Sundance features with their iPhones. I mean, you know, the doors are so wide open in a way that previous generations did not have. That, like, try it. Get together with one other friend, and like Brandon and I were shooting scenes for our reels before we did Muted. You know, it was like we got a random friend who had whatever, the Canon 5D, and we were like, hey, want to show up on the UCLA campus? And like we wrote this 2-page scene, and like we're kind of typecasting ourselves, and we'll put that on our reel.
Mhm.
That's kind of, those are like kind of the building blocks to figure it out. Let's just make our own shit. Like
Yeah.
our reels are meh. Like they should be better. I think we can do better than what our reels show. Let's
Mhm.
just shoot some shit and put it up on our Actors Access. And now we have something. You know, just try it.
Yeah. Well, I'm so happy that you are a, producer, writer, soon to be director.
Soon, but not that soon.
We didn't talk about that. I shadowed directed on Bosch, and it
Did
was
you?
one. Yeah, I got three. You know how actors, when we want to show for a little bit, we just ask. We just like, hey, this is one of the things I want to direct episodic television, and I never would have done it if like I hadn't been watching what the other people were doing. I was like, I want to do this. Can I just ask? And I saw them asking and doing. I was like, well, I can do that. I want to direct. I really wanted to. And I just put my name in the hat. And I was like, and they're like, yeah, you've been on the show. I was on the show, 5 years by that time, and they're like, yeah, absolutely. And that is priceless, stuff that I can say I shadow directed on there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's good. So I was going to say though, but I'm so happy that you are on this side because I feel like you champion actors and, and that's not everybody does that. I've I've been around that block. So thank you from all of us out here. Thank you so much.
Of course, DaJuan. Thank you for having me. This was super fun.
Quitting. That's such a strong word, right? I mean, no one wants to be a quitter. That word automatically denotes, well, in my head, it does, failure, right? Does it mean the same for you? If you quit, that must mean you failed. That type of thinking has been ingrained in us since we were little kids. I wonder if failure is the real word we're running from. I mean, what happens when you give it your best? You loved it. You played all out, but then you fall out of love with it. You fall out of love with doing it, doing everything day in and day out. You don't want to do it anymore. What happens if we celebrate that journey for people instead of all the insecurities that it stirs up in us when we hear that somebody wants to quit, when we hear that somebody wants to move on? That word quitting can become toxic. Today's D12 shot for me is Tara saying, I was just unhappy with my day. She didn't feel like she was quitting. She just knew it was time to move on, and I just loved it. I have friends, clients, other actors, that have been in my sphere, the acquaintances that moved on from this career and led successful lives. They either didn't want to live this life or they just wanted to move on. They loved it and they were ready for their next identity in this super, super short time we have on this earth. That's just my big takeaway from this episode. Giving yourself the grace and the space to know when it's time to move on. And alternatively, knowing when it's time to just take a break and come back with a clear head. No toxicity, just clarity. Those are two different things. So maybe it's different that you need a break from it all, or maybe it's time to move on. If this message was for you, if you've been looking for a sign or a word to step into your next identity, I guess I just want to say, give yourself permission. Give yourself this permission slip. Even if it's just for 90 days, try it out. Nothing we do needs to be permanent. And then make the next best decision for your life. I'm seriously rooting for you. I'm always, always, always rooting for you. And if this message isn't for you, support someone else in your life that it might be for. It doesn't have to be just for you, right? You know what I want you to do. I want you to share this episode with one. Just forward this message on. Share it. The podcast on there. I want to get out to so many more actors, and we're almost reaching our downloads with each podcast. So thank you for sharing it. Let me know on my DMs. Write me at DaJuan at thinkbiggercoaching.com. I want to know what was your favorite takeaway in this podcast as well. And I will see you for the next one.